We're interrupting our scheduled program to take you live to the campaign trail of election 2016.
On the budget bottom line, we know that under Labor, the budget deficit would be bigger every single year of the budget forward estimates period. We know that the spending promises that Labor has been making in this campaign so far are unfunded to the extent that they would increase the size of the deficit each year of the budget forward estimates period. It is incumbent on Labor to let the Australian people know how much bigger the deficit would be under Labor, because increased deficits lead to increased taxes, which hurt jobs and growth. The second point that became very obvious is that the Shadow Treasurer, Chris Bowen, does not understand the impact that Labor's tax policies would be having on the Australian economy. He did not seem to understand that as a result of the differences in policy positions so far, as announced so far by the Coalition and the Labor Party, taxes would be more than $100 billion higher under a Labor government than they would be under the Coalition. More than $100 billion higher under Labor than under the Coalition, which would be bad for jobs and growth. In this campaign, only the Coalition has a national economic plan for jobs and growth, a plan to secure the successful transition of our economy from record resource investment driven growth to broader drivers of growth in a strong and more diversified economy. Labor just has a plan for higher taxes, more spending and more debt, and of course this is not what Australia needs right now. Happy to take questions.
There's debate at the moment about a treaty following Bill Shorten's comments. The Prime Minister says that this could be potentially dangerous or could be violent. What do you think the dangers could be of having a treaty? Is there any risk of having one?
Well, I mean, the Prime Minister is absolutely right. The priority for the Coalition and the priority for Australia right now, is to secure constitutional recognition of Indigenous Australians in our Constitution. And, obviously, as the Prime Minister quite rightly pointed out, achieving the necessary public support for a change in the Constitution is not necessarily straightforward. And it's not a matter of convincing people who are already in violent agreement with each other. It is a matter of convincing those Australians who might perhaps have a slight hesitation. And the history tells us that the way to achieve constitutional change, the way to secure constitutional change through a referendum is by having, firstly, strong bipartisan support, but really, there's a need to go well beyond that in taking the population with us, taking Australians with us, including taking Australians with us that might have a slight hesitation in relation to what is proposed. Now, by Bill Shorten, in our view, quite irresponsibly, putting another dimension on the table before we have been able to cross that bridge and secure the change to the Constitution that has bipartisan support, does put that project at risk, and we think that is disappointing.
Could a treaty open up claims for legal compensation, new claims?
Look, our priority is on securing constitutional recognition of Indigenous Australians, and we believe that the best way to secure the necessary public support for that is by focusing on that particular proposition. And the risk with these matters is that those Australians who are in violent agreement with each other, continue to have a conversation with themselves, which will not ultimately result in a successful change in the Constitution. That is, what the Prime Minister was pointing out, and that is, self-evidently true.
When you get between the lines, you're basically inferring the coalition scared of a debate
No.
on a treaty. Why is that?
Well, that is a very negative misinterpretation of what I've just said.
Well, then why are you saying that it's a risk that we're talking about?
Well, look at the history. Look at the history of constitutional referenda in Australia. look at what is required in order to secure a successful change in the Constitution, a change in the Constitution that the coalition supports. But having coalition support, having the support of the Labour Party is not enough to get a change to the Constitution passed at a referendum. You need the support of a majority of Australians and a majority of states. The history shows us that people are, not necessarily always going to be enthusiastically supporting a proposed change, even when it has bipartisan support. Now the key is, in our view, in our judgment, the priority ought to be on engaging with the Australian people in relation to the proposal to change the Constitution to enshrine Indigenous recognition in the Constitution, and to ensure that we take all Australians with us, and to ensure that we take those Australians with us that might have a slight hesitation in relation to these matters. I mean, that is always the challenge when you pursue constitutional change. That is always the challenge. And the point that the Prime Minister made, and the point that I would make here this morning, is that by putting that additional dimension on the table that Bill Shorten has put on the table, he puts that very important project at risk.
Do you favour constitutional recognition which gives substantive rights, or merely a mention of Indigenous Australians in the preamble?
Well, obviously these are matters that are to be finalised through a bipartisan process. The coalition supports constitutional recognition of Indigenous Australians, recognition of Indigenous Australians in our constitutions, and obviously the specifics are to be worked through a process that has been set up with bipartisan support.
Sally-Anne Innes was employed in the Coalition Advisory Service under the MOTS Act in 2014, Minister, while also working for the software company Parakelia, which was selling software to Liberal MPs. How is that not a conflict of interest?
Well, I mean, all questions in relation to Parakelia ought to be addressed to the Liberal Party organisation. In relation to staffing arrangements, all arrangements that have been in place in relation to these matters are entirely lawful and appropriate.
But you're the Special Minister of State, Minister. This woman was working for a company that was selling software to Liberal MPs, while at the same time employed by taxpayers for the Liberal Party in the Coalition Advisory Service. How is that not a conflict?
Well, you make assertions that I don't necessarily accept in relation to Parakelia.
She was sending emails from a Parakelia email address, and she's listed in the contact directory for the Coalition in 2014.
Well, in relation to Parakelia, I would refer you to the Liberal Party organisation.
Were any other staffers employed in the CAS also working for Parakelia?
Well, again, in relation to Parakelia, I refer you to the Liberal Party organisation. Are there any other questions?
Are you concerned about the renewed volatility in financial markets over Britain leaving?
I mean, as we've been saying all the way through this campaign, Australia faces a series of actual and a series of potential global economic headwinds, and we need to ensure that Australia is in the strongest possible position to deal with any external headwinds coming our way, and that we're in the best possible position to take advantage of the opportunities that are in front of us, being here at the heart of the Asia Pacific. Now, that is why we are putting forward our National Economic Plan for Jobs and Growth. That is why we're putting forward our plan to build on the progress that we have made over the past 3 years or so in strengthening growth, creating more jobs. If you look at the situation that we inherited on coming into government, the economy was weakening, unemployment was rising, the budget position was rapidly deteriorating on the back of unsustainable spending growth locked in by the previous Labor government. We are now in a stronger position with 3.1% economic growth, stronger employment growth, an unemployment rate below what was previously anticipated, the budget position on a credible path back to surplus. But we can't rest on our laurels. There is more work to be done, and there are a range of risks and potential risks in front of us, and the one that you mentioned is potentially one of those. But we've got to ensure that here in Australia we make every post a winner. We ensure that we are in the best possible position to deal with whatever comes our way.
Both Moody's and Grattan's to the state of the budget does leave us vulnerable to global economic conditions, and if there's another global downturn, we can't just keep relying on the RBA to help us out.
Well, the important point here is that the budget is in a stronger position than it would have been if we had not changed the policy settings that we inherited from Labour, in particular on the spending side of the budget. And secondly, the budget is in a stronger position than it would be if Labour was elected at this election, because as none other than the opposition leader Bill Shorten and the Shadow Treasurer Chris Bowen had to admit, the budget deficit would be bigger every single year of the budget forward estimates period under Labour. They were not prepared to talk straight and directly with the Australian people. They clouded it in weasel words and technical language, talking about a lesser fiscal contraction and talking about the effect of their promises over the medium term. But if you look at the bottom line of everything they've said, Labour has said that the deficits would be bigger under Labour as a result of the spending promises and the policy decisions that they've made. Now, it is incumbent on Labour to be honest with the Australian people about how much bigger the deficit would be under Labour, and that is what we are calling on them to do today.
Is there a contingency plan in case the markets do suffer a big fall if the Brexit push is successful for weeks?
Well, our plan is the plan that we are laying out in this election. It's our national economic plan for jobs and growth. Well, you've asked the question, if I may answer. Our plan is our national economic plan for jobs and growth, and it is designed to deal with global economic headwinds that might come our way, and it is designed to ensure we're in the best possible position to take advantage of opportunities in our region. Now, that is why we're pursuing the very ambitious innovation agenda to attract additional investment into startup businesses. It's why we're pursuing our defence industry plan to support local high-end manufacturing. It is why we're pursuing our export trade deals to help Australian exporters be more successful in selling Australian products and services in key markets overseas. It is also why we are pursuing a more competitive business tax rate, something that Labour once supported but now has essentially joined in with the Greens in their anti-business, anti-success, anti-jobs and growth agenda. I mean, our entire plan is geared towards putting Australia on the strongest possible foundation to deal with any external headwinds, but also to take advantage of opportunities.
Well, that's fair enough. But
Thank you.
We're talking about a vote next week, not in 10 years' time. I mean,
Well,
we'll have got to wait for us to get our budget in order before they go fairly up. I mean, this is next week.
Well,
It could last until 2019 if they decide to leave. There'll be, a couple of years of uncertainty, and we'll still be in deficit.
Well, Colin, the point that you raise, the overall point you raise, is a very good point, and that is that we always have to keep doing everything we can to put ourselves on the strongest possible foundation for the future, and that is what we've been doing over the past 3 years. Over the past 3 years, we've been working to strengthen growth, and growth today is stronger than it was when we came into government. We've been working to get the budget back on a more sustainable foundation for the future, and what we are saying to the Australian people is, given all of the global economic headwinds that are or could be coming our way, given the need to be in the best possible position to take advantage of opportunities, we need to continue to head in the right direction. We need to continue to go down the path of implementing our plan for jobs and growth, that this is not the time for political instability. This is not the time to change direction. This is not the time to go for the chaos and dysfunction that would come with a return to a Labour Green independent alliance of the past. That is our key message to the Australian people. Given everything that's going on, it's very important that we stick with the plan.
If there is a global slowdown because of Brexit and a range of other factors, would a re-elected Turnbull government pursue an expansionary fiscal policy, Minister?
Well, you see, what's been happening in the last 3 years is we've been dealing with very significant global economic headwinds. We've dealt with a massive fall in the global prices for our key commodity exports like iron ore and coal. We've been dealing with slower global economic growth, and if you look at the way the Australian economy has been performing in the context of all of that pressure that we've had to deal with, we are performing very well. Our plan is our plan is reflected in our budget, and we delivered that budget on the 3rd of May this year. That is the plan that we're taking to this election, and we believe that that is the plan that will put Australia on the strongest possible economic and fiscal foundation for the future. It is the plan that Australia needs.
Sure, but isn't it reasonable for Australians to know, given, as Colin says, the vote on Brexit is next week, whether a re-elected Turnbull government will expand spending, grow spending to support growth in the economy if there's a global slowdown?
Well, Australians know exactly what the Australian government will do, because we've put it out there openly and transparently in our budget. And the National Economic Plan for Jobs and Growth reflected in our budget is the plan that will put Australia on the strongest possible economic and fiscal foundation to deal with any global economic headwinds coming our way, and it also puts us on the strongest possible foundation to take advantage of the many opportunities that we have, in particular in this part of the world, where most of the global economic growth will continue to be generated for years and indeed decades to come.
Sure, I understand that, Minister, but specifically my question is about what would the Turnbull government response be if you were re-elected, if Brexit goes ahead? How would you handle that?
Well, and I have very specifically answered your question, and the answer is that our plan is reflected in the budget, and that in our judgment, this is the plan reflected in our budget is the plan that Australia needs to ensure that we can deal with any global economic headwinds coming our way, with any external challenges coming our way. Look at the alternative. I mean, the alternative is a bunch of people that want to spend more without telling us how they would pay for it. A bunch of people who have already told us that deficits will be bigger each year of the forward estimates, which would weaken Australia's capacity to deal with external economic headwinds. A bunch of people who've told us that they would increase taxes compared to the policy positions the coalition has adopted by more than $100 billion, which would weaken the capacity of Australia to deal with these sorts of external economic headwinds. I mean, the reason we are pursuing export trade deals so far with China, South Korea and Japan, and now looking at finalizing a deal hopefully very soon with India, and then perhaps the European Union. The reason we're pursuing these deals is because we want to ensure that Australian businesses exporting their products and services to the world have the best possible opportunity to be successful. The reason we are pursuing a more competitive business tax rate is because we want Australian businesses to be able to attract additional investment, boost their productivity, increase their success so that they can hire more Australians and pay them better wages over time. Every part of our plan is designed to ensure that Australia is in the strongest possible position to deal with any challenges coming our way, including the challenge that you mentioned.
So just so I'm clear, and I apologise if I'm being a bit slow, Minister, the current fiscal settings as laid out in the budget in terms of spending to support growth wouldn't change if Brexit happens. Is that what
the budget is our plan for jobs and growth. The budget is the plan that in our judgment Australia needs in order to help secure the successful transition in our economy and to help ensure that Australia is in the strongest possible position to deal with any external challenges coming our way. I mean, because there are such challenges, because of the global economic uncertainty right now, that is why our message to Australians is support the Turnbull coalition government to keep going with the plan that is clearly showing, already showing success. Don't take risks, don't go for the political instability that would come with a shortened-led Labor-Green independent alliance. Just remember what they delivered last time.
Oh, just that message of risk and political instability, that sounds like a message that should be directed to those in the UK considering it.
Australia, as an open trading economy, always faces a series of global economic risks, and we always, you keep asking questions and you don't want to listen to the answer. So Australia as an open trading economy always deals with a range of risks from time to time, and we've got to make sure that we make the decisions here in Australia to put ourselves in the best possible position to deal with external risks beyond our control, and in the best possible position to take advantage of opportunities. I mean, that is always the circumstance. We here in Australia control what we control. Other people in other parts of the world will make whatever judgments they want to make, but we've got to put ourselves in the best possible position to deal with whatever comes our way. All right, thank you.
Thank you.